So this session that I'm going to cover today is custom functions in Zoho apps. And really the kind of goal of this session is to kind of open your mind to some different capabilities that Deluge has across the Zoho application suite. So really kind of giving you an idea of some of the things that you can do, some things you may not have thought of yet, some different options that are there for you to make the applications work better than they do out of the box. So Deluge allows you to add what we call custom functions into Zoho applications. And custom functions really are just new things, basically, new actions that happen inside the application that are different from what it originally could do. And this makes a lot of sense, right? Because whenever you have an application, even if it works really, really well, it usually won't check off every single box on your wish list. There's a few things that you wish it did a little bit differently, or there's a few tricks that you wish you could teach it. It might be the nature of your business, or it might be something that changed over time. But either way, just little pushes that you would like to do. And so we usually look at custom functions as little tricks that you can teach the application. So it gives you a way to modify it to work a little bit differently than it does so that it fits your needs better. So two things that you've probably learned if you didn't know anything about Zoho before, or if you do know a lot about Zoho, like things that keep coming up. One, we have a lot of applications, right? We have several applications, something to run everything for your business. And if you're on Zoho 1, then all of those can work together and you can actually run your business on Zoho. And the second thing that we iterate a lot is that Zoho runs on Zoho. So we use all of our own applications. Everything's built in-house. We don't acquire anything. And we use that to run every piece of Zoho. But I would say like a nice footnote to that, something that you don't hear as much as that second part, is that we also have to use custom functions. So even though we built the applications, they don't work perfectly for us, right? There's little nuances that our business works differently, and we have to utilize functions to make it work. And the best example that comes to mind for this is our CRM. We constantly are creating new modules for the sales team to track new processes. And, when you do that, you can link it to another module, but it won't automatically pull all of the data that you need it to. So you can use a custom function to do that. That's probably the most common custom function across all of our apps, is anything that allows you to update data between modules. So some things that you can do with custom functions, you can update records. So that's exactly what I was talking about with the CRM example, sharing data between modules. That's one of the primary things you can do with functions. You can also perform actions. So think of it like anything you can do with a workflow, creating a task or creating or sending out an email. You can also do a little bit more. You can do things like adding notes and adding events, which you can't so much do with workflows, but things like that. But you can also do some more in some of our other applications like Zoho Mail. You can actually use functions to move email from one folder to another. Now, I remember when I first saw this example somewhere, I thought, well, can't you do that with a filter? You kind of can do the same thing, but a function would kind of allow you to put all of that into one piece instead of having to create several different filters. You can also use functions to perform calculations. So you can actually build your formula into the function and then run that. An example would be something like adding a late fee, and this is actually one of the examples that we'll go through when we're looking at books. And then you can also push or pull data between Zoho apps or third-party applications as well. So we're going to take a look at a few different examples, and what I'm basically going to do is just kind of talk about another app, show you some scenarios of things that you could do with functions inside those apps, so ways you can extend the usage of those apps. And then we'll actually jump into that application and we'll take a look at that in action. So we're going to take a look at Desk first, so Deluge with Zoho Desk. Desk is our help desk ticketing software. So think of it like a customer can send an email to support@mydomain.com. It would create a ticket inside your portal. They can also call. You can integrate your phone system. They call in, and the interaction is logged as a ticket. Basically, gives you a way to manage your customer support and the customer experiences that you're having. So one of the things that you can do with Deluge inside Zoho Desk is you can actually create a function that will give you a count for the number of threads in a ticket. Now, thinking about Zoho Desk, some metrics that are usually really important are things like number of tickets and agent rating, their feedback rating, things like that. But the number of threads within those tickets are actually really important as well, because sometimes that can really explain why an agent has significantly less tickets in their queue than everybody else. They are working on tickets that are particularly troublesome, it's taking a lot of development time, and the threads are just adding up. Or it's an indication of a problem. Somebody's not doing as good of a job at addressing the problems in the tickets, so you need to kind of evaluate and figure that out. So with Deluge, we can create a field that will just give us a count for the number of threads, and the function runs every time a new ticket is sent or received out. It'll just update, and I'll show you guys what that actually looks like inside Desk. Another thing you can do with Deluge is you can prioritize the ticket priority based on the sales probability over from CRM. So the integration between CRM and Desk out of the box works really great. It will allow you to kind of view your tickets in this sort of like a Kanban view. It's going to put categories for if they're a lead, if they are a contact, if you have an open opportunity with them, or if they're a closed-won customer. And so that in itself is really great because it allows your support team to kind of prioritize those tickets based on how they are labeled inside your CRM. But this takes it a step further because we can actually then use a custom function to associate the sales probability. So thinking just specifically at this point about open opportunities, the sales probability with the priority. So it's another level of prioritization for the support team to kind of make sure that they're jumping on the folks that are about to close faster than maybe somebody who just entered the pipeline, right? It's kind of one of those things that we know all customers are created equally, but sometimes you have to give more priority to others just based on where they're sitting right now. But we're going to jump into Desk, and I'm just going to show you what it looks like when I added that function for counting the number of threads in a ticket. So I'll just open up one of these tickets that I've got here. And you'll see here over on this left-hand pane, it's got this outgoing count and incoming count. So these fields aren't there out of the box. I added those are custom fields, and then the function is kind of tied to it. So anytime an incoming or outgoing response is captured in here, it's just going to update the count on our outgoing or incoming. So it just lets us know like how many threads are involved. So then we can take that number, we can put it into reports, we can, send it out, we can use it for filtering, whatever, we can push it back to the CRM, whatever we would like to kind of help us more with our analytics or kind of gauging the productivity of our support agents. If you are interested in adding functions inside Zoho Desk, just a quick shot of where you're going to go for that. So up in your top right corner, we've got our setup menu. And when we go in there under automation, we're looking at this workflows option here. And so this is where I've got this. This is just a simple workflow that I've got created, and it's got this get the count. It's just a function that's added onto that for the action that's telling us, to count every time and bring that number into the ticket. So moving out of Zoho Desk, we're going to look at People next. So we're going to kind of jump into more of the human resources application. So Zoho People, if you're not familiar with that, it is our application that allows you to kind of manage your employee ecosystem, whatever that looks like. So you can add all of your people, all of your employees in there. You can set up sort of like an onboarding process for whenever they get hired, the documents that they need to sign, the things that they need to read, that you need to indicate that you've given to them and they have accepted it. Whatever those kind of specific requirements that you have for taking new hires through the onboarding process, you can kind of manage all of that inside People. And then you can also do things like track their time. So their, clock in and clock out, all of that you would need for payroll, their leave schedule, holidays, all of that stuff kind of gives you like a full system to manage all of that. So some ways that we can use Deluge to extend Zoho People. We can do a couple things. We can use custom functions to do an automatic deduction of leave time. So let's say you have a really strict policy in place, and if you come in late more than 2 days. And then you can be really generous and say it's more than an hour late or something like that. It'll automatically take 1 day of leave time off. And that seems really harsh, right? But when you think about it, if it's something like, it's up to an hour, you can be an hour late before that's going to happen, kind of seems fair. There's not really a lot of excuses why you would need to be too late over more than an hour 2 days in a row. But things like that you can do that would just automatically deduct from your leave bank. You can also do an automatic attendance checkout. And this is the one that I see used most commonly inside Zoho People. We're seeing we don't have a lot of people utilizing this that need that strict kind of control over attendance. It's more, did they show up for the day? And if so, then they're good for the entire day. Maybe they got their work done in 4 hours and they left, or they were there until midnight. But either way, basically you check in and then it will auto check out for you. So we see a lot of people looking or utilizing that. I'm going to show you guys kind of that first example just because it's a little bit different. So if you're not familiar with People, this is your home page, and it's kind of hard to demo this actually in action because they'd have to check in for it to then take their time away. But I have kind of taken an account of that, and I've kind of set something up. So if we look here at our attendance tracker, and I'm just going to go into one of my employees that I have. So we can see here Carrie's time in her shift time starts at 8 a.m. every day. So we can see on Monday, she came in at 9:10, and on Tuesday, she came in at 9:30. So over an hour late 2 days in a row. And when that happens, that's calling a custom function that is then updating. And on my leave tracker, you can see here, the personal leave for everybody is set to be 3 days. So they get 3 personal days a year. But on Carrie's, it's gone down to 0. She's taken so many of those lates throughout the day or throughout the year so far, however long she's been there, that it's just wiped out all of her available time that she can take on leave. So it's just an example, kind of giving you an idea of some things that you could do inside People. Functions inside People, that's all found under your automation section. So we are in our settings and at the bottom right corner. We go into automation and then this workflows area. And so in here, we can actually create workflows, and just like we can do in the CRM or Desk, and we can add as actions custom functions. So the next app that we'll take a look at is Zoho Projects. So Zoho Projects is our project management application tool. It allows you to create projects that can be internal for maybe development purposes, or it can be external, actual client projects. So things that you're working on, you're providing deliverables to clients, and they have access to log into your project database. So a couple things that you can do to extend your usage inside Projects with Deluge. We can send an SMS to a project owner whenever a bug is filed. So out of the box, workflow capabilities in Projects will let us send an email alert, but we could use a custom function to send an SMS to the project owner instead. We can also push active bug analytics to a website. So you probably see this a lot of times. Companies will have on their website somewhere a posting of the bugs that are currently they're aware of in their system, or things that kind of, it's usually in that development roadmap area. You'll see like active bug tracking. So things like that are something you can do with a custom function. You can actually push those bug stats to your website. And so I've got this active project that I've been working on here. And when I come into this, basically what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of show you how creating that bug. So when I click on the bugs option, I can actually log it there. And when I log this bug, it's going to automatically send that text message. So all I'd have to do is come in here and I'd submit a bug, and I could just name it like issue. Probably would want to fill in the really good details on this, exactly what's going on. But when we add that bug, then we're able to look down here at our activities area, and you'll see that this function was executed. So I've got this send SMS function tied in here. So as soon as you log that bug, it immediately is pushing that SMS out. So just a kind of quick spot or shot of what you can do there. Your functionality for custom functions inside Projects, when you go into your setup menu up in your top right corner, under the issue tracker section, you can go into automation. And then once you're in here, you'll see the section for your workflow rules and your custom functions. So then we're going to shift into our accounting software now. So Zoho Books. So Zoho Books is just like it sounds like, your accounting option that's going to let you raise estimates, invoices. You can actually take customer payments. They'll have like a portal where they can log into and make payments on invoices or partial payments or whatever you need. And then you can also kind of balance the bookkeeping and expenses and all of that all in one platform. So a couple of ways that you can extend your usage of books with Deluge. We can create a subscription automatically once an invoice is approved. So if you are selling subscriptions of any kind, you can send out the invoice for the subscription. Once it's been approved, then that can automatically create a subscription record over in Zoho Subscriptions. So you don't have to manually go through the process of creating that. We can also do a late fee calculation. So this was something I had mentioned before as like an easy example of formulas in Deluge. So what we can do is we can just basically set it to say when the due date approaches or passes, then we're automatically going to call a workflow that will call this function and add a 3% late fee onto the invoice total. So it's not anything you manually have to do or go make adjustments to. It's something that will automatically happen in the system. For this, we'll go into Zoho Books. So if I am in my homepage area here now, what I'm most interested in is the left-hand side, our sales, and then we'll go into our invoices. So I've got a list of my invoices here, and I can see mostly paid up, but the last week or so, we're kind of getting behind on collecting payments. So if I go into one of these invoices, the due date was October 1st, and when I look at it now, I can see that automatically the adjustment got added. So I've got a function in there that says whenever that due date approaches to automatically call that function and add that late fee. So in my case, it's just automatically updating this adjustments tab. If you wanted to modify the template a little bit and make that say late fee instead of adjustment, you can definitely do that. But I just use the default Zoho template that we had in there. So it just automatically adds that on for you. No extra work required for it. Functions inside Zoho Books, you're going to find those if you are in your setup menu up in the top right. And then under automation, when you go in here, then you'll be able to, just like your CRM, just like Desk, create a workflow, and you can add functions as an action. So that's what this function is doing right here. We're getting near the end of the examples, I promise, guys. So the next thing I want to move into is survey. So I try to include an example from each of the different product suites that we have. But the CRM gets so much love, and it's going to get a lot of love tomorrow. So I wanted to go with a different sales marketing app. So Zoho Survey was the one I went with. So Survey is our application that lets you send out feedback and response surveys to your customers or your leads or whatever group that you would like. And then that information can then be looked at in reports or pushed back to the CRM. So one of the things you can do with Survey, we can actually use Survey to calculate a survey score. You can set the scoring rules of each of the fields that your recipients are filling in. And then if it's based on a certain amount, if it's maybe higher than a certain amount or lower or whatever, it's just going to push over no matter what. We'll push that record over, and then we'll also push the survey score. And so the reason that this is really helpful is because it helps your sales team prioritize records. Maybe you have a group of attendees from a certain event, and you send out a survey, and based on their response, it's going to let you know how interested they are in possibly moving forward or learning more about a new offering that you have. So something like this lets you know these people are actively engaged and interested versus the ones who leave bad feedback. Maybe you know, like, I want to talk to them. I want to see what's going on and see what maybe we need to think about and make adjustments to. And that kind of leads to this second option. You can push negative feedback via survey response to a ticket in Zoho Desk. So they rate very low on the survey ranking, and then they fill out a long description. You know that that's something you probably want pushed over into Desk so that your support agents can kind of take a look at that and maybe address it. And basically just what's happening here is as soon as this survey goes to a recipient, they fill it out, it's pushing over into the CRM. So it kind of comes full circle. We'll look back at the CRM now, and I've got a list of these survey responses. These are the people that have filled that survey out. They got pushed over into my CRM, and I have their survey score here. So this is really great because I can prioritize, I can sort, filter, whatever I need to, and tackle these leads the way I want, hopefully get them to buy something. Real quick, inside Survey, the function area for Survey. So when you're looking at particular survey, in this case, this one that I built here, it's going to actually live in a little bit different area. It's going to live in the builder of that specific survey. So that middle option up in the top right, that builder, when you click on that, that'll take you into your survey settings. And then up here at the top, this hub area, this is where you're going to see your integration options, and that's where the triggers are going to live. So that's where you're going to see your functions that you can trigger. And then when you manage that, you can build that out there. And so then our last kind of product that we're going to look at is Zoho Docs. And I added this one last just because I've talked with a lot of customers recently who have this interest in consolidating all of the documents or consolidating all of the notifications that they have. So this is really prominent, especially with Zoho One users. So they've accepted the idea like that we're always promoting of being able to run everything on Zoho, and they've moved into Zoho One and they're using several things, and that works really great. But sometimes you want like centralized places where things will live. And so a lot of that is coming up with documents. So there's several different places, as you know, around the different apps where you can add documents and they don't feed back into one place. We have Zoho Docs. Work Drive is something that we just released. I don't think it's been officially released, but it's one of our kind of newer, or it's going to replace Zoho Docs. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to tackle with those applications. One of the things that Work Drive is really focused on doing is allowing you to take all of those documents from the different places that you upload them. So if it's CRM, if it's projects, if it's desk, and consolidating them into Work Drive. So immediately pulling them into Work Drive for you. So in the meantime, while that's something that we're still working to add, there are a couple things you can do with Deluge that will help. So you can pull attachments from all these different applications into Work Drive automatically. And so you think of it like that attachment section that lives in the CRM or lives in Desk or all of those places where you can think of where you can upload a document. That's what we're talking about. We can use a function. It can be like behind a button or whatever we like, and then that will pull it over into Work Drive. And so if I'm looking at my CRM, and so I have a lead here. I actually uploaded an attachment to them just a few hours ago. It was the wee hours of the morning. If I go into this lead here, we're looking at this section down here for attachments. So you can see this attachment that was added on October 2nd. So it was added early today. And when we see where we attached that there, we can go over into Docs, and that same attachment was automatically mapped over. And so the way that happened was I added that attachment, and then I just created a button in my Leads module for Push to Docs. And so it pushes anything that lives under attachments over into Docs for me. So it's a very simple function, but you can do this in any of the applications where you see your attachment section. That's something that you'd be able to do there. And it kind of helps out with that idea of centralized document management, at least until we fully get that up and running. All right. So Deluge is currently supported in 19 different applications across Zoho, and more on the way. So this is definitely something that when we first started doing Deluge, it was in response to customers that were constantly saying, I want this to work a little bit differently. I want to make this tweak. We knew we couldn't make all of the tweaks because then it wouldn't, fit a wide range of people. It would be just too fragmented. But we decided having this idea of custom functions would allow you to build that yourself. So you can always go in and kind of customize it and cater it to your own needs. That being said, we are actively paying attention to the functions that are being used, the flows that are being created. All of those types of things are playing into the development of the product. So if we see particular functions being used a lot, then definitely that's a indicator of this should work like this out of the box, right? So that's something that we're always working towards, but we're also working on developing Deluge in the other apps so that you have the option to kind of make changes along the way too. So just a list of the apps that do support custom functions. So all of our sales and marketing apps, functions are coming into campaigns and sites. They're not quite there yet, but they will be. And then we looked at some of these other applications, but all of our finance apps, all of the collaboration apps, they all have functions built in them. Sheet just recently got kind of a slew of new functions and crazy stuff that you can do in there. So that's really, really cool. And then all of the support apps, the HR apps, and our custom process apps, all of those have Deluge capabilities. Just something to keep in mind when you're trying to think about different things that you can do with custom functions. If you go into the documentation that we have online, the help documentation for each of the products, there's a lot of stuff going on in the community pages about people talking about different functions. It's usually a very easy place to go in, and you can even post questions about functions, and people will collaborate and give answers and stuff too. But some of the teams are also really good about posting functions. So the CRM team especially, they do like a regular custom function series. And basically they just take function requests from customers. And if it sounds really good, or if they're like, hey, that's a great function, like we should showcase that, then they will put it on that custom function series. They'll post the code, everything for you so that you'll have full access. So makes it really, really easy to, get ideas if you're stumped on anything, all that good stuff. And that is all I have for you guys.